decide?
Yeah, we'll filter. We'll filter. So we are sharp. We have 1 more minute to go, so we will. Yeah. So I don't tend to look at the phone number.
So we are live now.
Good afternoon. It's my honor and privilege to welcome you to an Exchange for Media conversation, an Exchange for Media dialogue on marketing technology, on what's happening in the business environment. This is live on exchangeformedia.com, impactonnet.com, pitchonnet.com. It is also live on bwcio.com. Today we have a very special guest, and we couldn't have had a more special person than him, and a more relevant person than him to talk to us about how technology is in some way transforming our businesses and will help us triumph in the future. So with this, let me welcome Mr. Karan Bajwa, who's the MD and CEO of Google Cloud in India. Welcome, Mr. Bajwa, to this conversation, and we're delighted you could join us. I'm assuming that you're joining us from your home in Gurgaon. How has remote working changed the way we do business and bring technology to the fore? I'm sure that's the silver lining that all cloud companies, and especially Google Cloud, which is such a large player in this segment, have seen. So how have been the last 90 days for you, Mr. Bajwa?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Anurag. It's always a pleasure to interact with you, and I've seen you and your platform grow. So it's always a pride when I look at you. Thank you for inviting me today. Look, I think it's not an easy time for anyone. So while I will talk about the silver lining in this whole environment, I want to be respectful that everyone's situation is different, and people are going through very, very tough times. Just before this, you and I were talking about the fact that as this gets closer to us, reality bites, and it's getting personal as some of our friends, family get impacted. So it's a very tough time, which is unprecedented. Anurag, you and I have lived many crises in our lifetime, which have been not as deep and as prolonged and as impactful as this one. It's been 3+ months, and we still aren't seeing any way close to the end of it. The financial impact is very, very deep. We have not yet calculated the lasting financial impact of this. Um, People's work styles, work lives have changed. All of that is, and not everyone is engineered to be working remotely. People's environments are different. So I'm respectful of all of those limitations in people's minds, people's environments, and yet I see that there is a lot of things that are going positive. First of all, Anurag, we are able to spend time as families that we never did. Think about it. How much time would we spend with our families? And suddenly now we have time at hand with families. It does bring in very awkward moments, but it's an amazing experience. Just surely in terms of our ability to work from home, first organizations went through the learning curve. Anurag, and I can tell you that not many organizations were engineered for 100% work from home for a prolonged time. You'd be surprised at the kind of organizations that were challenged, deeply technical organizations, organizations that were actually the providers of technology also got challenged. So people went through that learning curve of making sure they could, as much as possible, and I'm sure not every organization can. Manufacturing is a tough challenge. As many organizations as possible working from home. Working from home also, there are some interesting nuances on it. Suddenly we find time on our hands. I'm personally seeing, Anurag, that productivity is an all-time high. We have a wonderful tool at Google where we actually can track we can track, just the productivity that we have on a weekly basis. It's mind-boggling. It's not a number I'd like to quote because it's not a benchmark I'd like to set. That's not the right way of working. But simply, you have time at hand. Your ability to engage with customers is very, very easy. Think about a forum like this, Anurag. If we had to do this forum in person, imagine the number of people you would have to invite, the logistics that you would have to do. people would have to travel from their homes to the location and back. You would take about 4 to 5 hours to do a 1 hour intervention. And here we are walking in from a prior meeting, and we'll walk into a next meeting, simply taking 1 hour, and we can impact. I was just counting, and I understand there is huge webinar fatigue that is setting in, but yet people's ability to learn, people's appetite to learn has significantly gone up. Technology's played a massive role in this whole change that we are seeing. And God bless the telecom companies, and Rag, they were going through a very, very tough time pre-COVID. And suddenly we see that they are the kind of foundation on which we are all able to work today. So bless them. And I hope that sector emerges much stronger. But technology has played a massive role in helping us,
get through this.
be productive today. Be productive today, absolutely. So, and there are many learnings we'll talk about as we go, Anurag. There are many learnings about
Karan,
the hows of working. Yeah, please.
you've almost had a 3-decade career in this, and you work with large technology companies. You are now leading Google Cloud in India. Before that, you were with IBM. Before that, you were in Microsoft. So you've seen technology for at least last 25 years very closely, and how it impacts human interactions, how it impacts work, how it impacts business. So tell us what has changed in the last 25 years. Give us 2-3 mega trends, and also tell us where in the next 3 to 5 years where we are headed.
Sure. Look, let me give you the lens of how I've seen technology, the mindset around technology change over the years, Anurag. I remember 20 years ago when we would send an email to a CEO, as a technology company reaching out to the CEO, we would immediately be sent off to the IT department. The CEO would never engage, rarely engage. That was the first kind of I saw that wave. And I'll bring it alive from a technology standpoint, but I want to talk about the relevance of technology to businesses.
Sure.
Then came a point where CEOs got interested in technology. They wanted to know more, and we used to have conversations with CEOs. But they always used to be there. It used to be along with the IT departments. The CEO could never have the conversation alone. So we would always have the CEO and the IT department together. Then came the phase when when CEOs got interested, they got deeper. They started seeing the business impact, and they wanted to learn more, and they wanted sort of to reach out and engage directly with the companies. We started seeing a very different engagement at CEOs and board levels. And finally came the phase of really deploying capabilities like the CDO, the CTO across organizations. So we've seen a multitude of phases of technology adoption, the relevance, what will happen after COVID. I'll talk about it in a minute, but I've seen the relevance of technology change at the CEO's desk in a significant way. Technology 20 years ago was absorbed or adopted in a very fragmented manner. Uh, the traditional buying of hardware and then software and integration and then support, it was bought in a very fragmented way. Integration started happening. You saw outsourcing happen, which was basically letting go of what you could not do very well. We saw that phase happen. We saw a phase where people were consolidating technology assets. Then we saw a phase where people were very comfortable buying fragmented technology, integrating that. They became comfortable with technology. So we've seen many phases of technology adoption in that sense. And now we were just about getting into a phase where the consumption model of technology was coming in, Anurag. And that kind of was being fostered by cloud hyperscalers as well as by SaaS companies. So the consumption model came into being. I believe that this particular phase that we are going through, howsoever unfortunate, does provide a massive tailwind to the whole ecosystem around cloud and SaaS companies. The consumption of technology will fundamentally change as we emerge from this crisis. God bless, we should do soon, but it'll fundamentally change. Is what
so, Varun, sorry, quickly coming to the today's agenda now. So the one thing that we wanted to start with, and then there are a couple of points that
I think that Iraq, there is crossover, I believe.
There's some cross connection. Priyanka and
before that, you
team, it has never happened.
I'll just check.
I guess you have two studios live right now, Anurag.
Yeah, must be. By the way, Karan, I'll tell you, just to build on, I am very aware. I told you what happened to two of my colleagues yesterday. One of my senior most colleagues in the Bombay office went to heaven, and one of my. So I'm aware of the personal challenges, both on the life side and the livelihood side. And what one can do is to do your best, pray for others, and do whatever you can do within your power and means to help them, and contribute your, people like you and me cannot sit idle, because we also have responsibility for other people. I have responsibility for 300 people beyond my own team at home, right? So I think we have
Sure.
to go on. But one of the things that has happened is, I'll give you both Exchange for Media and Business World's example. Business World, I kept saying that we have to be video first, digital first. Today, we are doing 4 to 6 hours of programming in Business World. We're doing 2 to 4 hours of programming, video programming in Exchange for Media. We've become fully digital. We've added 30,000 subscribers to the Business World newsletter organically. Organically. We've hit 30 million traffic in businessworld.in for the last 4 months on an average. We used to do between 12 to 18 million. And so, there are positives that have come through without kind of making too much effort. And what we have to look at is the impact on the environment. We're traveling less. It helps our body, mind. You're eating at home. When did you eat for 60 days at home, Karan? I didn't. So I think there are positives. Of course, what is negative is people are losing their lives. Businesses are under pressure. And there is a definite, if I may use, and I'll send you an article I read, that people are grieving. There is a grief, said, unsaid, about, a lot of things changing around them. Not being able to go and see somebody you want to see, right? Not being able to go for a walk. So coming back to technology will ensure some of those experiences are in some way mapped online. You were talking to me, and then the interruption came, so we'll come. You were giving us a perspective on, how CEOs, promoters now talk to the technology company and the technology evangelist, and they want to talk first to the technology person. And I keep saying every business, earlier we would say this is a food tech business, this is a media tech business, this is a med tech business. Now every business has to be a tech business. It has to be a fintech. It has to be a prop tech. I mean, if it's not tech, it won't possibly thrive.
Sure. I think, and that brings to the point that we'd almost reconcile to the fact that all businesses are enabled by technology. But I think what's going to happen in this environment post-COVID is that technology will become the driving force. It will bring technology to the fore of the business and not just the enabler for the business. But I was going to talk about just the trends that we see on technology post-COVID. What are going to be the big trends that are going to be dominant in the marketplace as we emerge stronger out of this crisis? So first of all, I think there is an opportunity, even before I talk about technology, there's an opportunity for us to reinvent the way we work. Our workplace should look different from the time that we came into this crisis. The workplace should look very, very different. Ability to work from home has opened up people's eyes into the art of the possible in terms of what can be done. There are some very bold moves that have been announced by the organizations. One of the IT companies actually has publicly announced that by the year 2025, they would only have about 25% of their workforce sitting in a physical office. Now, Anurag, that is bold, right? That changes fundamentally what the workplace will look like. And bless everyone, if you embrace that mindset as much to the extent you can, depending on the business that you run, that would completely change many dynamics in the marketplace. The cost dynamics for technology companies, the dynamics for the real estate business, et cetera, et cetera. It will change a lot of things. So the first trend that I would see is organizations will build a capability of working from home. And it's not just about video, Anurag. Video was the first port of call as we got into this crisis. Video was just the first port of call. There is collaboration, there is security that comes in, there is seamless exchange of data sharing. How do you actually have a meeting as if you and I are sitting in the same room? So organizations will implement ways and means to implement work from home for 100% of their. I pray we never have to face anything like this, but that's the first thing I see. Increase in digitization, Anurag, will automatically increase the demand for, as the footprint of digitization increases, the surface area increases, demand for security and privacy will go up. Security will serve as the foundation element for innovation in things like AI, on big data, on cloud, etc. So that's the second piece that I see, increase of security. The third fundamental change I see is the consumption model of technology should change, will change from a very capex driven model to a opex driven model. And I know I have a colored lens on the cloud, but I'm more talking about consumption models rather than I'm not trying to talk only about the cloud. But the consumption model, people will conserve capital and use it for their core business, whereas they will adopt technology more boldly through opex. And opex allows you to lower the entry barrier for use of technology. The fourth thing I see is there will absolutely be a mainstreaming of AI and ML. AI and ML have been things we have spoken about, things we have piloted for a very long time. Scale use of AI ML is something that organizations will need to go. The smarter ones will innovate faster. They will go on scale. They will invest on scale. I think gone are the days, people will be interested in doing pilots. I wish and hope. India has been famously called as the graveyard of pilots. People have to learn from each other rather than recreate. And there will be massive, scale use of AI ML building in as we emerge. And finally, it's very important for traditional organizations. They do have incumbent IT, and we have to be respectful of that situation. I believe there has to be a bold modernization of legacy platforms in traditional companies. And I'm not saying you take it and throw it away, but modernization of your existing environment so you can support, outward looking digitization.
So we'll
Outward,
leapfrog.
yeah,
We'll
you will
leapfrog.
absolutely leapfrog. So those are the five big things that I see happening as we emerge out of COVID, Anurag.
So Karan, just to build on what you said, and thank you for giving us those 5 inputs, is suppose a large organization, let's say BW 500, let's say an FMCG company like Levers or a Godrej, and similar large companies, if they were spending X on their technology, what will that X become? Will it become 2X, 5X, or will the X will get redistributed to new technologies? So my question is, does the technology spend go up? And you said it will become an OPEX, so it will provide an opportunity to increase it. Second is, how does it get redistributed? You talked of throwing away legacy systems and bringing in new modern.
Yeah, I just want to be careful. I did not talk about throwing away legacy. I spoke about modernizing legacy.
Okay.
There is a path to modernizing legacy without throwing it away, and then you can slowly do it. So I want to be very careful. Don't give a wrong. I don't want to give a wrong message on that. Now, I will not try play crystal gaze on will IT spend increase. I think what is more important is uh, the fact that technology adoption will increase is a given. That's very obvious. Technology is what's making us work today, what's allowing us to be productive today. So the adoption of technology will increase. Now, the question is, if you go back to the old way of buying technology, where you had to invest right up front before you could get the first benefit of technology, that's tough because then you are taking precious capital away from your core business. If I'm manufacturing, I got to pay my people, I got to get my raw material, I got to enhance my supply chain. Yeah, technology is super important for me, but I can't do anything without those three ingredients. So I have to use technology, and that is so clear to me, but I have to use it now in a way that I don't have an entry gate that's so high. And that's why consumption models. So if I look at the total cost is a wrong way to say it, but if I look at the total spend over a 5-year period, sure, I think it'll increase. As technology footprint increases, sure, it'll increase. But will that mean that you will suddenly have to spend the minute you come out of COVID, are all IT companies going to stand up in front of you with a huge bill? I don't think that's going to be the way of consumption. The maturity of the SaaS-based model, the cloud-based model, has reached a point, Anurag, where people have tasted early success. It is famously sort of known now that across all enterprises, mature enterprises, about 20% of workloads, as we call it in the IT parlance, have moved to the cloud. So people know how to migrate. People know what to get out of it. They know the nuances. They know the security connotations as they come with the cloud. So people have tasted success. It's a question of scaling. People know the benefits of AI, ML in small use cases. They got to scale it. So innovation on scale is going to be key for us. Adoption model going from capex to opex is going to allow us to do that without having to spend precious capital in terms of a high entry barrier. That's how I see traditional organizations, like as you said, a few names, have the ability. And equally so, Anurag, it's very important that organizations have the power to break. You cannot make the new without breaking the past. If you try hold a lot of the legacy of the past and try to go back, it'll be a lost opportunity in my view. If you go back to the old ways of delivering things, one of the things I have been constantly saying in this period to every CEO is, as you get back to your offices, get to your conference rooms, put everything on the table. And if you find yourself doing something the same way that you were doing pre-COVID, question yourself 3 times before you go back. And you may still go back, but question yourself 3 times before you do that, because there is a new way of working. There's possibly a way of working. This opportunity should not be lost. This crisis should not be wasted. And we should reinvent what we do, how we do, and how we execute in the marketplace. And yet I'm not being insensitive to the fact that yes, there would still be some things that would not change, but the opportunity for CEOs is massive to reinvent themselves.
And just to, I asked you, so you will not use the word TCO, total cost of ownership, and it is about total implementation of technology, over a period of time. As you said, it becomes with a SaaS-based model, it becomes an OpEx. Now, where will, suppose this 100 rupees was being spent in X by Z, where do you think will it get redistributed? Some of the things that you were a technology investor, or a technology investor in the sense a user investing in it, was spending, what are the new things that the user will spend on?
Look, I think it's fairly well recognized now. There's been many words given to data. Somebody's called data as water, data as oil, etc. So the power of data is clearly established in people's mind. Most business models that have been disrupted, whether it is in B2C environments, whether it is in hospitality environments, etc., have been on the power of data. That's clearly established. So there's no question around that. It's equally well known that a lot of incumbent organizations, traditional organizations, are sitting on precious data, right? So I think the shift, what has happened in the past, Anurag, and again, I want to be sensitive, as respectful as I can, but there's a change happening, so I have to be blunt. By the time when a person decided to go out buy IT, a lot of the money was taken up by, lots of hardware being thrown in and lots of software being thrown in. By the time you wanted to do some business impacting, you were like choked on money, and you had spent all your money on IT. Money was choked in. Look, I think that spend will shift to things like data. That spend will shift to things like AI. That spend will shift to things like analytics, which are high business impact. What changes the business for me, and how can I minimally bring technology? I want to bring more technology and burn less money today. Yes, I may burn more over 5 years, but I want to burn less today.
Impact, and as you see the
results, as I see the impact,
the ROI.
Technology spent over a 3-year, 5-year period will go up, Anurag. There is no question about that. It'll go up. It'll go up significantly. I won't sort of crystal gaze and say how much, 2x or 3x. Sorry, go ahead, please.
When we talk of large corporations, we understand. One of the huge things that happened is democratization of access to technology. I think that has happened. My maid is also equally prevalent and using technology as my parents are using Zoom or another video technology from Google or whatever, other players. Now, do you see for the SMEs, because it becomes an OpEx for smaller players, companies that have less than 30 crores of turnover, 50 crores of turnover, as compared to companies that have 500 crores, 1,000 crores, 2,000. Do you think technology will become more affordable and smaller players will be able to use technology better because they have no legacy? Plus, their businesses have become so much driven by technology.
Sure. Anurag, I love this question because you used a term which I use almost every day today, which is at the core of what technology companies should be doing, which is democratize technology. I think the core, in the past, technologies had a very elitist way of adoption. Think about it, Anurag. The access to technology you had in your office, and I'm picking on you. Maybe it's not the same access that possibly the last person in your organization had. There were tiers of usage. But when we sit in this time, everyone needs the same access. Everyone needs the same capabilities. You need to talk to people, collaborate with people, share information, and be productive. So you almost need the democratization of technology. And I actually had promised myself I will not do a sell job on this. I'll not sort of wear my Google hat on this table, but I do have to, because that's what Google's always stood for: democratizing technology, putting technology out there, making it easy to use, and putting it in the hands of people. I think that's so important. I think one of the simplest things we did as we saw that people were simply unable to work from home, we took our Google Meet platform and actually we said with a clear mindset to serve customers and not to sell to them. We said use it for free for the next 6 months. We will not charge. We'll see what happens after that, but go use it. Put capability and tools in the hands of the people and try to make sure there are not multiple tiers. Of course, people will need a couple of nuances around technology depending on the tier of usage, but don't build too many tiers. So democratize the technology. That is, I think, a very, very well said point by you. The second point is SMEs, which have, if you look at India, and let's stay to our country, if you look at India, what really is the India customer pyramid? The India customer pyramid has some 500-600 customers at the top, which are like any other customer in the world. They are almost they look like a customer in New York. And I remember one of the people saying it in the past. There is a New York on top of India, and that New York behaves like New York. But then the real India starts as you get down, and that real India, which is the MSMEs in the country, the number ranges up to 550 million as from many estimates. Different nuances. There are different tiers of them, and I'm not going to sort of put them into one bucket, but that's the 50 million MSMEs in this country that really can use the power of technology to do many things. Simply first go out in front of customers. They need digitization to get out in front, get their business online. They need productivity. They need Salesforce automation. They need an accounting system. They need technology.
And
How would
integration
they?
of all of this.
Oh, that's the complex part, Anurag. That's where the fun begins because they had to. Now, if I'm a MSME with 100 people, I can't afford an IT manager. I can't afford a CIO's function, right? I had to go buy hardware. I had to look at a mom and pop shop to buy hardware. I had to go figure out, a software. Half the time I'd be scurrying around to see, where can I find software. Then I had to go beg, borrow, steal, and get an integrator to put it together for me. And then I had to pay ongoing support charges. I had to worry about security. I had to worry about upgrades. It was an unending problem. So I said, let me not use it for now. Let me use minimal. Suddenly, with these models of consumption, as I said, the SaaS models, the cloud models, they allow you to use technology. Why is there an explosion, Anurag, for SaaS companies in India? You suddenly see, we've always said India is a house of services arbitrage. Look, no, there is massive capability building in the Indian ecosystem around SaaS companies because these consumption models have now matured out. Look at organizations like Zoho. Look at organizations like Tally. They have provided the right ecosystem for customers. We are working with a lot of players in the market. We recently announced a collaboration with Airtel, where we said we will use the Airtel route to market to go out to MSMEs and provide them technology in a consumption model. So I think a lot has changed, and a lot will change post COVID, just because of the maturity of all these technology models, Anurag.
Thank you. Karan, I want to ask you two more real questions. Earlier you would deal with a CIO, traditionally 20 years back, then it became a CTO. Then in the last 5 years, it was a CDO, a chief. Not every company had a chief digital officer. And I would say the CEO needs to be the CDO, right? And you said that right up front. But today, for the first time, the CEOs are interested in understanding technology absorption in their company. Now, is the CMO also got, when you talk of customers, has the CMO also got into the mix? So are you dealing with 4 or 5 people or the function of a CTO, CIO, CDO, CMO getting funneled into one? And technology companies have understood that so much money is being spent on marketing, on customer acquisition. So technology needs to be provided for that. So, marketing technology, MarTech has become very important. So give us your insights into this.
Look, this is a trick question, and I'll try not to fall for your question because, I do have my views on this, but I think I would say these roles have very distinct personas. And you took the CEO out of the mix because there are many CEOs who want to be digital officers as well. There is the CEO, there is a digital officer, there is a technology officer, the IT officer, there is the chief marketing officer. These personas have different roles in my view. If I just simply take the CDO and the CIO, I think there are distinct roles for them. That is why they have, and there are pros and cons of models where how these are constructed. But I think they have different personas. The CDO sits very deep in the business and looks at technology that changes business. The IT officer, the IT information officer, runs the mechanics of the whole IT shop. I think those roles have very distinct personas. Some organizations have tried to kind of bring them together. Again, those models exist, Anurag. It's depending on the industry you are in, the maturity level that you are in, you will do these different models. So I necessarily am not in favor of one or the other. It's each
What
model
works for
has
that organization?
what works for that organization really. But the core
But
point
what is
is,
your viewpoint, Karan Bajwa? Ideally, how should
I
it be?
again, it's I don't want to put my viewpoint out there because there are pros and cons and it's not proven as yet. It depends on the industry you are in. If you are in a very mature business, you absolutely will need roles that are very distinct. If you are in a not so mature business, possibly not. So I think it's not a one size fits all, Anurag. But the more important point is, Anurag, when you have these roles, how does the CEO empower the role? The CDO has to be massively empowered in terms of the decisions that he or she can influence on business. The IT officer or the technology officer has to be massively empowered. I think empowerment is key in my view. There is more work that needs to be done in empowering these roles than possibly the nuances around merging or not merging these roles, in my view. I think that's very, very critical. A lot of CEOs and boards, when this whole technology disruption hit them, I think they kind of, the ones that kind of wanted to do something, put a CDO in place. But what they did not do very well is they did not empower that CDO in the organization. They did not empower it, that individual. So I think that's the relook that you should do, especially as you reinvent business. Because when you reinvent your business post this crisis, you are not going to reinvent your business from a technology or an infrastructure standpoint. You are looking at your customer, you're looking at your partners, you're looking at your supply chain ecosystem. Those are the stakeholders that will determine what disruption has to be done. So the digital officer has to look at each of those stakeholders and value equations, and then kind of think about what digitization techniques. So it's technology later, it's business first, right? That kind of, so that empowerment has to be very, very important. And then you spoke about the CMO, and look, the CMO, from our vantage point view, Google works very deeply with the CMO community in enabling them, extend their outreach in the market and drive impact. And again, I think the marketing technology, as the word you used, is really providing a base for solving different marketing challenges with the emerging technologies that we have available today. It's just simply, a few examples. It enables you to create very powerful marketing tools and solutions with less time being spent on maintenance and management. The cloud option, for example, offers you a very flexible framework to build whatever is required at a pace that matches the industry requirement versus, think about if you had to roll out a new offering, a new solution, a new product, the amount it would take you in 5 years ago to the time it takes you now, it's unimaginable. And that's being powered through the use of technology. There are capabilities that you can bring in. I don't want to go deep in technology, but things that you can do from a cloud standpoint would help you reduce the amount of time it takes you to innovate and launch these capabilities faster. And sort of it goes on. So I think marketeers have used technology, and there is much more that they can do in terms of leveraging technology. And that is where, Anurag, you are seeing the convergence of media and technology. You've seen some of them happen in the industry. There'll be more happening. Media companies will be very much pushed by the customers to have a very strong technology edge on why should I make this investment? Give me more information on what will it do for me? Give me more data points on why should I consume more media assets? So I think media and technology in that sense will merge, and that will be pushed by the customers.
Thank you, Karan. And I'm enjoying this conversation because it's making me think as someone who is an entrepreneur and who did start a technology business 20 years back, but somewhere became a media business. Coming back to government has been a huge user of technology. Do you think going forward will government, whether central governments, ministries, and how they interface with citizens, whether it's for a passport, whether it's for a license, whether it's for registering a land record, do you think both at the state level and central level, investments in technology grow up? And if they go up, will governments will literally be on a cloud?
Sure.
You think the government should be on a cloud? And give us some examples how usage of technology in the last few years helped the citizen interface and governance being better.
Sure. Look, I can't again predict whether it will happen or not, but I think it should happen. The government now has a responsibility to rekindle the ecosystem in India. We've seen the $200 billion services industry, IT services industry get created in India. We've seen that, right? That industry is facing a challenge in terms of reinvention. The value equations are changing, right? A lot sort of has already changed, but that disruption continues. This crisis is a massive opportunity for the government to create a very different ecosystem. The government should invest very deeply in capabilities like AI, like ML, like cloud, like security, because these are the capabilities that the ecosystem needs. Look, Anurag, when you and I as organizations invest, our ability is small, but governments have very huge appetite. If government invests very deeply in these technologies, you almost create a massive ecosystem of skills and capabilities and people that can then be used to transform the industry. So honestly, how much does the government need to invest? It's not much from a governmental spend standpoint. A few $1 billion can totally transform both governance as well as government's ability to create an ecosystem. So I think government, and I'm sure this is a very, very smart set of people who will absolutely look at this. So I'm sure government has the ability to put massive investments in these cutting edge areas. And it's not about buying more hardware or cloud. That's not the idea. The idea is to build capabilities on massive, massive scale. My only call to government would be that now on, as you emerge these cutting edge technologies, which have to mature out, you have to leverage the model of partnership versus procurement. The model of consumption has to be you partner with and you choose your partners. You can choose multiple partners, but go out partner versus having to pick and choose and procure in the old way. So use the model of partnership versus procurement is my only sort of call to the government. But the government has a massive opportunity to rekindle not just the technology landscape in the country, but also help reinvent the technology landscape in the country. And that's what I believe is the opportunity for the government.
Thank you, Karan. At this point, I want to bring in some people who are asking questions, and I possibly will bring one or two on the video. But let me ask a question about Prachi Chandiramani is asking 3 questions, but I'll take one of them. How is Google Cloud partnering effectively with various startups post COVID-19? So is Google Cloud partnering with startups? What are you doing in the startup ecosystem?
Sure. I think Google's always worked with the startup ecosystem. The broader Google platform, it sort of goes way beyond the cloud platform. The broader Google platform is a very strong outreach into the whole developer ecosystem as well as the startup ecosystem. We've been fostering many ways that outreach is very, very expansive, if you will. I think there are many ways that we engage. Right from providing technology to providing capability to providing the early support to a startup, scale support to a startup. There are many ways that we engage, and that obviously right now these startups are going through their own learning curve as they get challenged on this crisis, and there is more push around. They were on a growth path. Now they're going to be held accountable for different metrics as they emerge out of this crisis. So we are deeply engaged with the startup ecosystem, the developer ecosystem, and we will continue, and the whole investor ecosystem, and we'll continue building on those investments.
Okay, there's one more question from Pratik Chatterjee. He's the head of Corpcom at NIT. He's the head of marketing also. He's also the CMO. Mr. Bajwa, you've talked about democratization of technology. How do you ensure security while doing so? You did mention security twice, thrice, but can you give us some examples?
And Pratik, I'd love to have an offline conversation. I've respected your organization and the people who founded it. Look, I think security is not an afterthought, Pratik. It's embedded in the core of your products. It's embedded in the algorithm of when you are developing your product capability. And that's how, a lot of tech companies, including ourselves, have been looking at it. If you think about, and again, I sort of gravitate back to wearing my Google hat. If you look at the scale services that Google provides, we almost provide about 9 services that have 1 billion users each. And incidentally, all of them run on the cloud platform. the scale of these services, security is embedded on these platforms. So I think it's a fundamentally different way of addressing security in that sense, Prateek.
Okay. You know, Karan, Pranamita Mukherjee is asking, Bengali names can be tongue twisted. You know, they're beautiful names, really, really, they have very good meanings too. So Pranamita Mukherjee is asking, post COVID-19, what changes will come in the marketing strategy of Google Cloud?
It's look, we are learning through this transition. I would not hazard, and I'm not the right person, honestly, on to be commenting on this one. My mandate kind of does not extend to the marketing capability. So, and then we are learning through the process. So I would not be able to give a very good answer to this question. So I would kind of respectfully pass. If there is a follow through that needs to be done, I'd love to, Anurag. I can offline get it followed through
Sure.
with my colleagues on the other side.
So I'll take one more question before I bring my final set of questions. Now it's a real question and we'll take it. Mr. Bajwa, it's very kind of you to agree to a video interaction, and we're doing it on Zoom. Why Mr. Gogia, Nikesh Gogia, though he spells it as Nikesh, Nikesj. Why is this meeting not on Google Meet rather than Zoom? We should have thought about it, and you've been kind enough. And I think you're being broad-minded. I mean, we've used Google Meet for some of our webinars.
And Anurag, it would have been so easy for me to reach out to you and say that I only will do this meeting if you were to do it on my platform. And I think that kind of defeats the purpose. We position our platforms on the value of the platform. There are users that use all platforms. We have to be respectful of the fact that there are all kinds of users using all technologies. I don't think it's a question of forcing anyone to use something just because I am there. I use Meet. I use Meet for all my own meetings. So, I don't. So, thank you, Nikesh, for asking that question.
Nikesh, on behalf of Business World Exchange for me, we used it. I recently did a conversation with the CEO of a large, staffing company, and he uses Google Meet. So we did a Google conversation. So I think it didn't strike to our mind, and for some reason, Zoom's adoption has grown. It's easy and we are familiar. There are many technologies. Google is also fantastic, and next time we'll be sensitive when we're talking to a technology leader. We use his or her technology.
And again, don't mistake me, Anurag. It's fine. I think the point is the fact that we speak about democratization of technology. People have to be able to access technology. Each one of us wearing a hat will be able to position our capabilities based on value. So it's not about forcing anyone to use any particular technology, in my view.
So Preetam Joshi is asking, is there any plans from Google to launch an updated version of whatever they are offering? I mean, that's the way I understand the question.
I did not get the question.
So he's asking, even I didn't get it fully. Preetam Joshi is asking, is there any Google planning to update whatever your offerings are? I think Google is ahead.
Of course, it's an ongoing, it's an ever ongoing. There's always enhancements to the product. There is updates to the capabilities. It's an ongoing exercise, and I don't think it's going to get impacted by this. It's an ongoing exercise. I'm sorry if there was a deeper meaning to that question. I couldn't catch it, but I guess there'll always be updates and upgrades to products and capabilities.
Karan, I want to ask you my last two questions before I wrap up, sure. And I'll ask one personal question, so three. First is, you became a CEO at a very young age. You became a CEO almost 20 years back, right? Now, what are the skills required to lead in this COVID? So what are the new skills people can add in the post-COVID? What are the skills that will matter over the next 12 to 36 months that one needs to add on, both as a professional in middle management and as a leader in senior management?
I've spoken to so many people on this subject that I have to be consistent, and I won't give you an answer that is different from what I've given people. I've been a huge believer of soft skills, and I've always believed that hard skills are easy to get, soft skills are tougher to get. And I'm a huge believer, and I feel that as you cross a certain stage in your career, when you take on senior leadership role, it's actually soft skills that differentiate you, Anurag. And there are three capabilities I've always held very close to my heart in terms of learning as well as coaching people. One's conflict resolution. A lot of people do not take conflicts, they put them under the rug, it only grows. Conflict resolution is number one. Uh, Number two, it's resilience. Leaders have to demonstrate resilience, and this is a capability that's holding us. I got to smile every single day, Anurag. I cannot walk into my office with my head down because I'm impacting hundreds of people. So I've got to be always smiling, and yet I may have my moods and my issues. But resilience and demonstrated resilience of a leader is extremely important. The third thing is handling ambiguity. The world is not zeros and ones. The world is not blacks and whites. So there's shades of gray that people have to be able to handle. I'm not talking about in a negative way, but people have to be able to handle ambiguity. So handling ambiguity, resilience, and conflict resolution, in my view, are three very strong capabilities that differentiate leaders.
I think Karan, I want to say to many of the people who tune in and I interact with promoters, CEOs whole day. Some of them are my friends, some are acquaintances, some are just business relationships. But I'll tell you, Mr. Bajwa always replies to a mail. He works for large organizations, so he has to involve other people involved. But he always acknowledges a mail, and it is very specific. That's a simple quality. Not everyone has that. And I admire him for that because he lives what he's saying. So he talked about how you resolve conflict, how you deal with ambiguity, and resilience. I think if you just had these three, everything else can be added on. Those are more tools. I wouldn't call them skills. You can use these tools. Your technology is a tool. It's not a skill. I think what Karan talked about as soft skills are the real skills. And he's very business-like because he works for a large organization. If he needs to take a decision, Mr. Bajwa will bring in the specialist or whoever is the head of department. And, in large organizations, there is also a matrix reporting, So I admire him for always being responsive and specific. My second question is, we are talking about technology. Now, security is a big issue. Pratik Chatterjee asked you that question, right? As the usage of technology goes up, there will be challenges like we are spending more screen time. Today, education has become edutech. There's a hybrid model. It's e-education. So there are negative impacts of technology. One is the increased screen time. Second is especially in children and young millennials who are working. We've learned things through physical, face-to-face interactions. So they are not having the art of conversation, which is the soft skills that you talked about. And third is what we talked about, digital democratization, but there is a digital divide that is being created. So how do you as a technology leader respond to these negative impacts? Increase on screen time, no personal interactions like they used to be. And third is access and, access devices and bandwidth not being available to everyone, hence a digital divide being created. So what are companies like Google Cloud doing to make sure that such impact is mitigated?
Anurag, look, we are in a very extraordinary time, so our behaviors are kind of extreme. So, and I would not extrapolate these behaviors beyond the time that we are in this zone. Screen time has gone up because that's the only mode you and I can talk to each other. That's the only way we can talk to each other. Will it remain the same? I don't think so. I think it will change. How much time you spend on the screen, whether do you have personal time, which was the second part of your question, all points back to how do you maintain a work-life balance. That's a very, very personal. Again, that's been a core belief for me that work-life balance is a very core belief. People have asked me many times, how do you maintain a work-life balance? And my answer has been, first of all, I'm the wrong benchmark. I enjoy my work. I have a problem with work and life balance work and life being talked in different ways. It almost feels like, work is something which is very rugged, and then, life is the fun part where I enjoy my work. I enjoy my work every single day, and I never think of it as a burden. So I have never had this problem of work and life balance, and yet I find time to do things that I have to do. What have I done in this in this COVID time, I started walking. I started with the aim that I want to achieve 10,000 steps a day. Gosh, I did that, and I upped the ante 15,000 steps, and then I upped the ante to 20,000 steps. I've not been able to do it every day, but I have touched 20,000 steps. And one of these days, I was actually walking 20,000 steps in my balcony. So I think it's a question of pushing yourself and finding the time. By the way, I had a long time aspiration to learn golf. I'm learning golf now. There are many other things I'm doing with my family. I've started to learn cooking, and yet I'm working 15 to 16 hours a day, and I'm loving each bit of that moment. So I think it's a very personal thing. Screen time. If I was not in the screen, I'd be in office. So it's a very personal thing, Anurag, that each one of us have to find our zones of comfort and work through that. And on your point on the digital divide, I think the digital divide, Anurag, is only reducing. Look at just the connectivity in our country. Look at the bandwidth in our country. Look at the data use in our country. Look at the smartphone usage in the country. Every aspect points to the fact that the digital divide is decreasing, and it's just being pushed more by the fact that people now can't engage physically. Hence, they're using digital capabilities, whether it is a form of voice or video or data. So I think the digital divide is narrowing, Anurag, and yes, we are, as a country, are very diverse. We have to always be mindful of taking the mass along, and yet we will always keep pushing, the edges on this one. But I guess in our country, we are in the right direction in terms of bridging the divide, and I hope we continue on that journey.
Esther, I'll ask you a personal question, and you answered it a little bit in my last question. That I agree with you. If you love your work, if you love what you do, then it's not work. And if it's not work, you continue to do it. So it's about making an impact, making a contribution. If you're doing that, I'm sure work feels like a blessing. Confucius said, if you make your hobby your profession, you don't have to work. I think Karan Bajwa is talking about the same thing. And because I've known him for 22, 23 years, a common friend introduced, and so I know he walks the talk. If he's not saying it, he's always on, always working, but finds times for other, relationships in life, whether it's family or the relationship with himself. My last question to you, Karan, is if we talk to Karan Bajwa 12 to 16 months from now, where would you be? What would you have achieved for yourself, for your family, for your customers, for your country? In the next 12 to 18 months, what is the impact Karan Bajwa would like to have on the ecosystem that he interacts with?
It's not important what I achieve. Honestly, it's not kind of, for me, the mandate that I have now is a mandate to create a platform. I get hugely inspired every day by the opportunity to create an organization uh, practically from ground zero. I get inspiration from working for a fabulous culture and building on that culture. Um, I believe the technology innovation that is available in our hands today is unprecedented. The scale of that technology innovation is unprecedented. Um, you know, my own aspiration is to create a platform that is able to solve complex customer problems on scale in this country, and drive technology adoption way deeper. It's a long standing dream of mine to solve the technology adoption for the mid market of this country, and that's an aspiration I'm yearning for in the next 18 months, Anurag.
And on a personal level, you also talk about learning golf, about being able to walk. I can clearly learn the walking bit from you. I'm doing 3,000 steps, which is not good enough. I think I'll try to do 5,000 today, and up it up a little bit. But since we have another 7 minutes to go, I'll ask you some supplementary questions. Where do you see the Indian economy 6 months to 12 months from now? And in the near immediate future, I know it may not pick up like it was, but where do you see it 6 to 12 months? Do you see demand coming back? Because that is very important to lift the sentiment.
Sure. Look, Anurag, it's extremely difficult. You ask this question to anyone, and I will go back to foundational beliefs. I'll go to foundational beliefs of what was happening in this country prior to COVID, and then we will have to kind of erase the impact of COVID from our lives as we go past COVID, and then see, has the curve changed? I don't think the curve will change. Will the curve take a dip? Absolutely, yes. We're already seeing that dip. but the fundamentals of the economy, the consumption of the economy, the growth of the economy, those fundamentals will not change. Yes, it will take us some time. I cannot say it will 6 or 12 months. I cannot predict that. But if we were to take a larger sample size of time and be looking back 5 years henceforth and say, has the curve fundamentally changed? I think the strength of the economy and the strength of the consumption economy in our country will still get us past it, and yet we will have to go through a tough time before the better time comes in.
Thank you, Mr. Bajwa, for talking to us. It's been wonderful talking to you, and I will look forward to more interactions with you. I want to tell our viewers our next issue of Business World is, the current issue that is at the stand is on the geo effect. How Mr. Mukesh Ambani is unlocking geo, but our next issue of BW Business World and the whole theme next week on Business World is technology transform triumph. It's the T3. How technology will help us get a better hold of our lives, of our business operations, and hopefully contribute to the nation's GDP. So to all the Exchange for Media viewers, Mr. Bajwa talked about how marketing has started to use technology more, but there is a need to adopt more technology. And he talked about how CMOs are a core, partners for his offerings and for technology companies and how they can do better. I was tempted to ask him that will the chief data officer be the chief technology officer? Not many organizations have the chief data officer now. They don't have a data head. And again, the data head doesn't sit in the board meetings because data determines how consumers are responding to a product offering or a service offering, to what price points, what is the consumer behavior, what is working in terms of adoption. So I think my takeaways from Mr. Bajwa's talk are on two levels. One, on technology, it will move from a CapEx model to an OpEx model. SaaS will become mainstream. He talked about how he has a dream of the middle India, the SMEs, adopting technology even more and making the SMEs more competitive using technology, using Google Cloud and other technologies. Third, he also talked about the fact that technology adoption will create technology democratization, and we'll deal with the issues of digital divide as we go along. Some of those can get solved automatically. He also talked about the fact that the CIO has his or her own role, the CDO has his or her own role, and they're working together to make sure that the business objectives are met. Last but not the least, he talked about the fact that the three key skills needed are personal skills, soft skills, and they are resilience, the ability to deal with conflict and to resolve conflict, and last but not the least, to be able to deal with ambiguity. Because we live in times where we don't have visibility beyond a week, beyond a month, and we live day by day. On this happy note and a knowledgeable note, thank you, Mr. Bajwa, for engaging with us and talking to us. I'm sure our viewers would be more wise and they will use technology in a way that enhances their lives. Thank you, and we wish you luck in your mission to empower everyone in terms of technology.
Thank you.
Thank you. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bajwa. Thank you, Anurag, sir.
Thank you very much.